About a decade ago, a surge of development swept through our desert communities. Our quiet, clear sky, fresh air, open space way of life was placed in the crosshairs. And an endless string of threats from uninformed development and blind land exploitation has followed. Then, about 2007, we became the center of attention as the effort to fast-track renewable energy swept across the nation. Even our government saw our Southwest as a desert wasteland waiting to be exploited, and new tax incentives became an attractive catalyst for the growing feeding frenzy. Our environment and our lifestyle were under attack. As a community, we came together to fight these threats. Leading the attack early on was the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We took them on,
that
and we won.
This battle.
It was an emotional experience for April.
Then, waste facilities, community annexation, the Cadiz Water Project, careless, dense housing developments, and more recently, unabridged wind and solar projects. So we came together and we fought. Again and again, battle after battle, we fight still. Now, who's next? What's next? But can we continue to fight project after project, depleting our resources until we simply lose our ability and perhaps even our willingness to fight? No, there is a better way to control these attacks. Stand strong with the law on our side and prevent these attacks from ever being proposed. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, a series of sweeping laws were enacted to protect and preserve our land and natural environments. The federal and then the California's Endangered Species Acts, the Land Policy and Management Act of 1976, the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. These strong laws have guided smart project development, stopped ill-conceived projects, and simply caused many bad projects from ever leaving the front office. These are the strict criteria we need to enforce, not fast-track and bypass. This is the law, and we must hold those who would blindly impact our quality of life accountable to its scrutiny. So, after a decade of fighting project after project, these laws can work with us and for us, but we must participate. All your voices are critical. Within these laws are several processes critical to our goals. Each of these processes consist of several stages, many steps mandating deep evaluation, several studies and surveys. As these processes play out, there are several opportunities for public comment. The intent is that every stakeholder will have a voice and can influence the decisions to proceed or not to proceed with any proposal. These processes are in play right now as the California Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, the DRECP, is being developed. This is a major component of California's renewable energy planning efforts. It's designed to help provide effective protection and conservation of desert ecosystems while allowing for appropriate development of renewable energy projects in our state. The DRECP covers approximately 22.5 million acres of our California desert. Over the next several months, big decisions will be made about our desert lands, decisions that will determine their usage for the next 30 to 50 years. Right now, the DRECP is establishing the rulebook for appropriate renewable energy development across those 22.5 million acres. The DRECP is being developed through a collaborative effort between the California Energy Commission, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, the BLM. So far, several alternatives are on the table. These are expressed in reports and supported by maps with overlays of potential renewable energy land use. Get to know these maps as they evolve and change, because they will map out the future of our economies, our tourism, our recreation, and even our neighborhoods. This is one of those maps of alternatives. All DRECP maps and reports can be found on the web at www.drecp.org/maps. This map shows the DRECP study area. It covers from Central California all the way down to the Mexican border and east to the Nevada and Arizona borders. Each of these maps from the online source show the entire study area in great detail, but for this presentation we have created a map set which covers the Morongo Basin and Lucerne Valley areas, so that we may enlarge the detail within our particular area of concern. It's important to notice the changes in land usage scenarios on these close-up maps. It's not difficult to see when the interests of one of the development partners become dominant over the others. It's also important to notice how some of these maps and scenarios show how little some of the development partners understand about the desert ecosystems, our legacy to the U.S. expansion into the West, the rich value of our Indian history and sites, the importance of viewshed and recreational opportunities to our growing regional tourist economies, and the wonderful quality of life that these desert regions offer for millions of Californians like you. So much of all these critical considerations are encompassed in the 22.5 million acres. These are the voices that are underrepresented in the DRECP process so far. Your voices. This map legend of color overlays gives broad descriptions of the projected land use. The DRECP reports go into much more detail. Solar PEIS variance lands. These overlays are carryover and tailoring of the solar PEIS. That's Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement for solar energy development, which previously determined areas for solar energy development across 6 Southwest states. Developers would be granted a variance to build solar projects on these lands. You'll see these overlays on one map only. They represent one of those areas that we will be watching very closely. As you will notice, these lands are often small parcels right in populated areas. Watch this one carefully. Proposed NLCS lands. These are lands proposed for protection under the National Landscape Conservation System, the NLCS. Mandated by Congress, these lands are placed into conservation and are not available for renewable energy development. The NLCS currently includes over 887 federally recognized areas and approximately 27 million acres of national monuments, national conservation areas, wilderness study areas, wild and scenic rivers, national scenic and historic trails, and conservation lands of the California desert. As you look more closely at these maps, you'll see quite a bit of this designation. In fact, there is a proposal to create 2 new national monuments within the DRECP study area in the Morongo Basin and in the Mojave. This is the designation we want for our most sensitive lands. Transmission corridors. 2 overlays in this description. The first marks approved BLM 368 federal energy corridors. Notice that there are no approved corridors in the Morongo Basin. We are actively working to keep it that way. These 2 to 5 mile wide land designations can be filled with large electrical towers and lines, gas lines, water mains, and access roads. You'll notice some of these scenarios concentrate available land near or around these large transmission opportunities. It's particularly attractive to the developers to build their solar or wind power installations near power corridors. Conceptual energy corridors. This designation is one that really troubles us. As near as we can tell, these are lands that none of the partners can be sure about specific needs or project demands, but they are unwilling to close them to development. The land will be available for transmission proposals. This is a land use designation that could become a big problem in the future. Development focus areas. Nothing ambiguous about this overlay. These lands are open for business. Keep a sharp eye on this designation. Areas of Critical Environmental Concern, ACECs. This overlay marks existing or proposed ACEC lands where special management attention and direction is needed. BLM recognizes the significant values of these areas and intends to implement management to protect and enhance the resource values. However, ACEC designation does not necessarily protect these lands from energy corridors, and it is uncertain what level of protection is offered against renewable energy projects. We would much rather see these lands designated as NLCS lands. These are the kinds of subtle loopholes and complications that are being studied right now in the DRECP process, and why it's so critical that we all express our concerns. Now that you understand what to look for, watch how these different scenarios designate lands around our region. Those large development focus areas become overwhelming to our region in many of these scenarios. And the final map shows all these solar PEIS variance lands in and among our communities. The impact that some of these scenarios would impose on our lives and on our tourist and recreation economies could be devastating. The DRECP will move forward with or without our voices. So to ensure the appropriate and correct outcome, to set the rules right, we all need to step up and be heard. Since we seem to be unable to improve developers' behaviors, I guess we'll just have to hold them more strictly to our laws. And that process needs to start right now, with you.